Hello, everyone. So I'm Cassandra Napoli, and I'm an associate editor at WGSN Insight, which is a cultural and consumer innovation arm of WGSN, which is a trend forecasting company. And today I'm here to talk all things sustainability with our lovely panelists. I guess to kick off, we should just have each of you introduce yourselves quickly. Yeah?
All right. My name is Ryan Hunt. I'm the co-founder and chief technology officer of Bloom.
My name is Michael Savarie. I am the Sustainability Enterprise Catalyst at Hemp Black.
I'm Shannon Ashford. I'm the founder and lead designer of Foolery.
Hi, my name is McGregor Madden, and I'm co-founder of custom bespoke brand Hall Madden.
Cool. So as a trend forecaster, I've been tracking sort of sustainable systems and sustainable innovations for years now, but it seems like in the last couple of years, maybe 2019, it kind of hit, I guess, it hit mass and it became a sort of a buzzword, marketing purposes. I was wondering if you could each, or if anyone wants to take this in particular, if you want to sort of define how you see sustainability today.
So from Bloom's perspective, we're interested in net impacts. So when we look at sustainability, one of the key metrics is basically looking at the life cycle impacts of a product. So when you analyze a product, it's not just the end material or the amount of biological material in it, it is the net impacts of the entire life cycle of the process. And so using third-party auditing processes can help define those metrics and communicate the impacts and the values to a consumer market that makes it more meaningful.
Yeah, and I guess at Hemp Black, sustainability is such a loaded word as it is, but we kind of tie everything to our mission statement, which is to benefit people and better the world. So we define sustainability as in how are we looking after the people, both in our supply chain and kind of the customers, and how are we impacting the world throughout our entire supply chain and after our product has been sold and eventually discarded. So we look at it both on a social and environmental level.
I personally like to think of sustainability as just maintaining balance in all aspects of a company. For Foolery, it can mean making sure that you're taking from the environment what you're giving back to it, or creating products that are being sold and making sure that we're not ending up with more inventory. But I think in all aspects of the business, it's just maintaining a balance.
So I would say sustainability to me is reducing waste, reducing materials, also while saving money. So for me, it's a very practical standpoint. Everybody can agree that if we can use less waste, use less materials, it's going to have a positive effect on the environment. So mine's just very practical like that.
Yeah, that actually raises a really good point, because in our conversations earlier, we were talking about the cost issue. That's a big sort of barrier to entry for a lot of brands. Does anyone want to talk about that a bit?
Yeah, I'll jump in there. I think Stephanie from Queen of Raw hit it on the head earlier. Sustainability doesn't cost more. And if you think of the life cycle of anything, it may cost more money up front, but would you rather spend $100 on a pair of pants now, or $15 or $20 every 6 months for the next 10 years? So you have to kind of factor those things in. So the investment up front, it could be more, but in the long run, it's a lot cheaper.
Yeah, and you kind of point to this idea that it's perception, and so that raises the education issue, which I love. I think education is kind of a twofold issue within sustainability. It's education of the consumers, but also education of the brand leaders, and kind of allowing them to shift without the sort of perception of it being too costly or too much of an issue for them. Does anyone want to tackle that as an education perspective? Are you interested in sort of, I guess, educating your consumers? Are you doing that in any way at the moment? Any kind of marketing around that?
Yeah, so we're considered a raw material provider. So we transform pollution into products using algae as our platform technology. And so one of the critical things is being able to communicate a rather complex technology or supply chain into very understandable and relatable terms. So as a raw material provider, we're not necessarily as forward-facing as a brand would be. And then the question is, whose responsibility is it to communicate that value proposition? And so we've realized that this is our branded technology, Bloom, And we try to work with the brands that are utilizing our technology to communicate the value proposition in a very clear and concise way. I guess maybe I'll just quickly go through these few pictures here. So with Bloom, we're essentially using algae to inspire the fashion industry to take their pollution or take industrial pollution and clean water, clean air, and utilize a circular system to transform pollution into value. So if we look at our process, we essentially convert the algae from a lake or a pond or some sort of water treatment system. That could be a textile mill or a power plant or even a car factory, and we convert it through our process into a moldable, formable product that can be used by a wide range of end consumers. And we've launched these products in over 60 consumer brands, including big names like Adidas, New Balance, Reebok, and Tom's and others, and this is Kelly Slater, a famous surfer. So when you look at these products, the brand is really out there trying to promote sustainability in an authentic way. So having a raw material that can clean the environment and provide value is something that the education is really critical to achieve, to pass on that value proposition to the customer.
Great. And then I wanted to kind of shift gears a bit and talk about sort of the minimizing of cost. I know you touched on that a bit. Do you want to tackle that in terms of how you guys are kind of going about that and how you're ensuring quality too?
Yeah, so a lot of people think that the more money you spend at something, the higher quality it's going to be. And we know that's not necessarily true. Porsches break down, Ferraris break down, and they're really expensive to fix. The way of looking at it is, how do you value your materials coming in? Where are you collecting your materials coming in? And how are you able to transform what others see as waste and repurpose it? The word waste needs to just be eliminated in general. Realistically, we shouldn't have any waste in general. Our ancestors before us were able to use every single material. So by changing the perception of what we see as waste and using that as a material, we're able to minimize costs on the front end of things and be able to kind of pass those savings down the road. On the flip side, or continuing down the supply chain, I should say, it's not, you need to look at optimization and efficiency. You can build a factory. Rana Plaza was a great example of this. They basically loaded a factory as full as they could, ignored all of the other aspects, and it collapsed. And people were hurt, money was lost. But if they just kind of looked at the efficiency of what they were doing and invested money into that, they would be able to kind of save more money in the long run, because any downtime in a full factory or busy factory is lost money, as we all know.
And then, McGregor, I wanted to toss it over to you. I know that you were talking about sort of the evolution of digital cuts in your business. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so one thing about our business is that everything is made to order. So it's all one-to-one. So if somebody is commissioning a garment, they're coming to us and there's not going to be any waste. One thing that we do is we put a client into a try-on. We then take a bunch of measurements, we pin it, we chalk it, and then we cut a test. The test, we're using AutoCAD, which I'm sure a lot of people in here use AutoCAD, and we're using Gerber laser cutters to cut the fabric. We do that because the dosage is cut down. So we're using less fabric to produce the garment. The test garment for all new clients is made of a recycled wool or recycled cotton, and then those can be recycled later. Wool's biodegradable, as we know. And then the final garment is made with like 2 fittings, so everything is completely like built to spec. So everybody's asking, how do we, become more sustainable? And the big, elephant in the room is fast fashion. I think everybody knows what fast fashion is, but most people don't know what is the opposite of fast fashion. So my business, Hall Madden, is made to measure, it's bespoke, it's one-on-one garments, and this is how I envision clothing in the future, a more sustainable future. So on the first photo, clients come in and they get an expert fitting, so expert service. Sustainability to me is all about passionate expertise. People who are passionate about what they're making are not going to be wasting products. So we're doing a shirt fitting in the top left. I mean, we're checking people's slopes, and we're doing all this stuff so that we know at the end of the life, or at the beginning of the life cycle of the garment, it's going to get worn because the client loves it. The bottom photo that's our new women's wear line, and people are going in there to select exactly every single specification that they want. And none of that, all the stuff that we did would not matter if it wasn't for this third photo. And the third photo is what all like high-end jackets, and in the old days, how jackets were made. They were made with what's called full canvas construction. So there's 5 layers of canvassing: cotton, wool, horsehair, mostly natural fibers, all natural fibers, sorry. And that is what makes a jacket like feel like it's floating with the client or with the customer. So when you build a jacket with these tried and true principles like a full canvas construction, it's gonna look better as you wear it. So 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, these fabrics, they'll last. And they're built on a foundation to last. So to me, that's what the opposite of fast fashion is its expertise, building to spec with the quality so that it lasts a long time.
Yeah, that's spot on. We've been tracking a ton of brands that are intentionally staying small. Is that something that's on your radar as well in terms of?
Oh, I'd love to be bigger, but.
In terms of maintaining the sustainable, integrity of it all, though.
Yeah, I mean, we know when we ship a box because clients come in and pick up their garment. It's a 3-fitting process. There is no waste with cardboard shipping out all these garments to people. So, yeah, I mean, we have to maintain a smaller sort of practice, but we can have multiple locations. Currently, we have 8. This year we'll have 10.
How are you using social media to kind of convey that all?
I wish we were better at it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting. And then Shannon, I know that you have a really interesting system in place. You've worked with, local communities in a lot of emerging markets to help develop your product. I was wondering if you can kind of share with all of us the great work that you're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. I have some very ambitious and exciting goals coming up with Foolery. So we started about 2 years ago, and we've been partnering with a company called Thread International that collects plastic bottles from landfills in Port-au-Prince, Haiti, and creates fabric out of it. It's actually what I'm wearing today. And they've created thousands of dignified jobs there through this whole process. So I've been very fortunate to be able to benefit from that partnership. And now they are going on to make their own products. So what I've been working on for the last few months is I've been working with a nonprofit based in Kenya, in Malindi on the coast. And I initially went over there to work with a local sewing college to make a collection to show at Paris Fashion Week. And while I was there, I had the opportunity to speak at a resource center with students aged 13 to 18, and got to tell them all about the fabric and the process and how it was made. And I got such a positive response. I had so many students coming up and asking me, well, we have so many bottles here. How can we implement this process so we can clean up our community? And so we kind of fed off of that, and I was able to meet with the Kenyan consulate while I was there, and they're trying to revamp their cotton industry, which is the contents of this fabric. It's 50% cotton, 50% recycled plastic. So it's been kind of a serendipitous journey, and it's now with all of the excitement that we created over in Kenya, my goal in going over there was to establish a sewing shop and to employ locals to make the jumpsuits that we sell at Foolery. But now, with all of the excitement we had with how the fabric was made, our new, much loftier goal is to actually start the same recycling process there. So everything from the bottles being picked up on the ground to the final jumpsuit will be made in one city. And as soon as we can kind of figure out that infrastructure, I would love to be able to implement that in other developing countries around the world, and so people can shop from their specific country.
And what is the biggest challenge in that?
The biggest challenge is the organization of all of it. It's hard to fit all of those pieces together because it requires a group to collect at the landfills and then find a recycling center who has the technology to be able to break it down into PET flakes, and then taking that and melting it into fiber, so it requires a fabric mill as well. So there's a lot of different components that are going to have to go into that. So it'll be a long process, but I'm excited.
Very cool. Another trend we've been tracking is this sort of shift to what we call open source caring. It's basically the idea that companies, perhaps unlikely partners, are coming together for the greater good of the planet and also the end consumer. One great example that I love is Nike's Circularity Initiative. They've got a sort of a sustainable design manifesto on their site that any company can access and learn about, different tools to create a more sustainable ecosystem for their own prospective brands. Is there anything in the works in terms of working with other partners in the sustainability space or outside, perhaps, to make or to help a company get a little bit more ingrained in the sustainable practices that you guys are experts in?
I think I'm just going to give if you look at the SDG Goal 17, it's partnerships. And that's the way we're going to be able to fix the problems that we are right now is collaborations and partnerships. I was at a conference not too long ago, and the key takeaway was collaborations. So I think, like on the stage right here, we have a lot of different innovators. In the audience, we have a lot of different innovators. And if we all just kind of took our technology and said, no, screw off, we're not going to share it with you, nothing's going to get done. Elon Musk was a great example of this. Is he built an electric car, open sourced it, and said, take my technology, further it. And that shouldn't, like, it's great that it's done, but it shouldn't have to be done. And the electric car was invented 50, 60 years ago, and it should just be a model that we shared. If we go back to the olden days, if your neighbor needed sugar, you went over there and got sugar. And it's these partnerships that are progressing us. So how we're doing that, even with ourselves at Hemp Black, is we've been able to develop a new black pigment that can replace carbon black. For those who aren't familiar with carbon black, everything in this room that is black, every piece of clothing, every piece of ink has most likely carbon black in it, which is petroleum based. Everything in the world has this, and by swapping that out for a renewable, rapidly renewable, carbon rich alternative that's grown naturally anywhere in the world helps out. And if we're able to partner with all of these brands that are making it, you'd be surprised how many companies use carbon black. And if we're able to partner with them, it may not be removing all the plastic out of the water, out of the oceans tomorrow, but it's making small steps. And it's those partnerships that you need to make the incremental gains in order to kind of get to the end goal.
Yeah, and I actually want to stay with you, Michael, because you mentioned something really interesting backstage about how you guys are thinking about getting into the beauty space. I just thought maybe that would be a good segue from the conversation you're having right now to talk about sort of the initiatives in the makeup brushes that you were discussing.
Yeah, so just even sticking on the carbon black thing there, any black mascara, eyeliner, any other makeup products that are black, excuse me, I don't wear too much makeup, but they require carbon black, so you're putting petroleum on your face. So if you're able to switch that with our black pigment, which does the exact same things but is natural, you're able to make more environmentally friendly stuff there. On the flip side, if you look at your makeup brushes, I'm just doing a quick show of hands, how many women change their makeup brushes or clean their makeup brushes? So 10 or 15, we clean that, yeah. So if you think of the amount of bacteria that's on your makeup brush, and you're able to swap that for a natural fiber or a synthetic that's able to kill this bacteria, you're able to reduce your interaction with bacteria. So by looking, we're all in the fashion space, but by looking past just the fashion uses of our technology, we're able to move much farther, such as what they're doing at Bloom. You're not just making algae, you're making products that can go into absolutely everything.
Great. And then another bit of a segue here, but we know that sustainability has really moved beyond sort of a buzzword and a sort of nice to have to a really essential business imperative in 2020. So for the brands here on stage, I wanted to talk about Millennials and Gen Zs and how, whether you're investing in them now, there's research that says that 75% of millennials are altering their buying habits in line with the environment, and separate research says that 77% of Gen Zs actually boycott brands that don't engage in sustainable behavior. Are you actively pursuing millennials and Gen Z, going after them right now? I guess I'm looking at McGregor first.
We are not.
Is it on your radar? Do you think it's...
Of course.
Yeah.
Typically, our clients are either businessmen, guys who want to have nice casual clothing, or grooms. So we do get some younger gentlemen coming through for like their first suit, but that 18 to 24 demographic, our price point's a little high. So obviously, we're going to be targeting the younger demographic, but that's something that maybe once they hit an older age, they'll be investing in our garments.
Is there any, I'm just going to push a little bit, is
Okay.
there any, I guess, initiatives for a diffusion line, some way to kind of court them now so that when they age out, there's more of an incentive to buy?
So I have an online-only business that I'm working on, and that's going to be mostly catered to the like 21 to 28 demographic, but it's still kind of in the works. But it's going to be cutting out a lot of the in-person fitting and using sort of a made-to-order model, just using the internet and photos and technology to make like a custom garment.
And how are you communicating those values with them, since that's
Text
so essential?
messaging. So when you go to this other business that I have, it says text a stylist, text a concierge, and within 5 minutes, there's an expert texting with them. It's brilliant.
And they react well to
They
that?
react very well to texting. They don't want to send emails and they don't want to call. So they're just talking to like a tailor. Sometimes it's me. So somebody's going online looking for a $500 custom suit, and they send photos of what their body's like. Oh, you know, how am I going to make this look good? We're sending them try-ons in the mail to try on, and then we make the fit based off photos or anything. But when they ask, like, oh, well, what should I be doing to the fit? Like, they're talking to me, and I'm just texting. It's easy.
That's interesting that you say that they react well to text,
Text.
because I guess in the nature of my job, I'm constantly talking to Gen Zs all day because I'm predominantly focused on youth culture. And one of the Gen Zs I interviewed recently actually told me she doesn't use words anymore. It's strictly memes. So in the future, like,
No, we don't do that.
so in the future, perhaps that's something you guys should all be investing in, is visual language is going to be key, I think, for Gen Z.
I just want to connect kind of two ideas that you've said earlier. It's how do we connect with millennials? And as somebody said earlier, the three most sustainable brands was, I think, Stella McCartney, Zara, and H&M. And it comes down to another piece, is the education. We need to educate these people. Like H&M, they're trying. They're doing things. Zara, I'm not too sure. But it's like Walmart, for instance. Walmart helped start the Sustainable Apparel Coalition, I do believe. They're the #1 purchaser of organic materials. So we need to educate millennials today in some media form, whether it's sending memes, whether it's texting, that they need to just know, they need to educate themselves. And it's us as brands, as businesses, to go out there and say, okay, this is what we're offering. This is why it's sustainable. This is why it should matter to you. And this is how we're going to help explain it to you.
Yeah, I love that you, what you just said about sort of talking about memes and things like that. One, I guess maybe actually I'll throw it to you first, Shannon. Are you investing? I know it's probably a little bit of a younger demographic, your business, but how are you kind of speaking to millennials, I think is the question.
Our biggest way of speaking to them is through Instagram. I feel like, as Tom Foolery is a one-woman operation, the easiest way for me to get our story out there is through social media. So when I'm able to go to Haiti and witness the whole process of the fabric being made, or go to Kenya and sewing with these girls, it's easiest for me to convey that transparency by just pulling out my phone, talking with the girls, posting videos, and just showing people exactly what it is we're doing in these countries.
Yeah, and then, as I said, there we go. So as I was saying, sustainability has moved beyond the buzzword. By 2021, it's expected the sustainable goods market will value $150 billion. So with increased competition in the future, I guess my question for all of you, there'll be more raw materials makers, there'll be more brands in the space. How do you plan on standing out amidst a really complex and crowded marketplace?
I actually don't necessarily view it as competition. I feel like with our company, our main product is women's drop seat jumpsuits. They're designed so that you can actually keep the top on when you have to use the restroom. So our major selling point and differentiator is the functionality of the design. And I kind of view sustainability as something that shouldn't necessarily be a selling point. I think it should be a standard among businesses. So I think when we kind of get to that point when people are making that decision because it's the right thing to do rather than it's a good way to market, I think that's when we're going to start making real progress.
Yeah. Anyone else? How about the wrong?
Yeah, so so the right thing to do is a good point. We hear that a lot. I go and present to these brands all over the world, dozens of them, and they kind of fall into two different camps. The one is, we're interested because it's the right thing to do. The other ones are, well, we're interested because that's the market trend, and to stay relevant, we need to be talking about these kind of things. So I think that, being able to integrate sustainability as core to the DNA of your brand is going to be really important to stay relevant. And so, in the case of Bloom, one of the things that we've really learned is that it's important to be able to start building that direct-to-consumer pathway, that we're educating this broader concept of utilizing circular processes, circular technologies, circular materials in the products, and in being able to build value around that. And from the brands that we've talked to, some of them want to tell the story. Some of them want to kind of hint at the story. And some of them just don't want to talk about it at all because it's all about their brand. And it just varies. I think it depends on the market and the product. But it's definitely a challenge.
Right. I think one of the greatest examples on the brand side that we were actually discussing backstage is I actually just learned that Timberland, they have developed a lot of new sustainable initiatives in their own business, and in their store on Carnaby Street in London and in New York, they're investing 1/3 of their physical store space into education for the consumer, so the consumer can enter the space and learn about some of their purposeful initiatives. And I think that's where it's really going from a retail perspective and from a brand side of things, is kind of really investing in that consumer, the end consumer, and kind of allowing them to see the value in sustainable norms, I guess, is what I'm going at here. And then the final, I guess we only have a few more minutes. So I do want to ask you one question that we can maybe open it up to some others from the audience. But basically, I love to end on this because it's a bit of an action. But if you could leave the audience with one piece of knowledge that they should be investing in now, what would that be?
I guess I'll jump in there. One piece of knowledge I try to live to myself is just slow down and take a second. Like, so much of our lives now are running, being fast, looking at our phone, answering an email. We don't take a second to breathe. And it's when we actually just take a second, whether it's to meditate, whether it's just to go sit on a couch, sit in a field. Like, when's the last time any of us just went and sat at a park? And as long as if we can slow down, we can change things. It was us wanting to be fast, which put us into this problem. How do we create materials that can solve things tomorrow, today? We can get Amazon delivered in 2 hours. If we really need a product in 2 hours, go to your store. It's down the street. That's my thing. It's just to slow down and just take a second to just smell the air.
I would just say that there's no silver bullet when it comes to sustainability. It's a very complex topic. There's many different lenses and issues that arise, and it's a combination of materials and processes and people. And so I think that as consumers become more aware of the demand and the need for sustainability on this kind of global context, I think we all need to be kind of looking at supporting brands that are utilizing a variety of different technologies. And I think over time, more and more of these products will become more efficient, and you've got to start somewhere. And maybe where we're at now is not 100%. Maybe we're at, 30% or 40%, but it's just that continuous improvement, this concept of a lean approach to refining the product, refining the technology, and just staying true to our core values and mission.
How about this? Next time you're buying something foundational in your wardrobe, so like a blue blazer or black dress shoes, don't look at the price tag. Look at how long it's going to last in your wardrobe. Look at how it was made. Look at how it looks. And think, am I going to want that in 5 years? Am I going to want that in 10 years? Will it last that long? Instead of saying, oh, wow, look at the price on that. The price is that way because they made too much of it. And if they made too much of it, then that's part of the problem.
Yeah, I think just start small and find what matters to you. Because I think if you find something that you feel very passionate and purposeful about, that's what is going to drive most of your decision making. So I think when you find, if there's a sustainability effort that particularly speaks to you, start with focusing on that. And I think if you just start with one small step, it's going to eventually expand into the rest of your life.
Thank you.
Thank you.